Welcome to Healing the Tigress, a podcast of stories and conversations on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts, Peggy, a licensed clinical social worker and certified breastfeeding peer counselor,
and Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist with a perinatal mental health certification. Both of us are Taiwanese American mothers and survivors of postpartum depression and anxiety.
We don't know about you, but we didn't grow up talking much about mental health in our families, and we want to change that now that we are mothers.
Together, with our clinical backgrounds and passion on the subject, we want to create a safe space for the AAPI community to discuss perinatal mental health issues.
And together, we want to break generational cycles in our own parenting journeys so that we can heal our inner tigress, a nod to the tiger moms before us. We are so happy you're tuning in here. Let's get started.
In honor of Father's Day, and since June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to have an Asian American dad guest on our show to talk about mental health. So today's guest is actually a friend of mine, a fellow pharmacist, Dr. Matt Dinh. And we first started talking more about mental health challenges after Matt posted a really personal post on his birthday 2 years ago, where he got really raw and honest about how parenthood had been really hard for him around, and I quote, raising a strong-willed toddler with big feelings. I think we all know what that feels like. And so, Matt, thank you for being willing to talk openly on our podcast about some of your difficult experiences in parenthood and how it has shaped or changed how you view mental health as a whole. I actually know a few pharmacist dad friends who have talked with me about their mental health struggles, and maybe because I am more vocal about mental health in general, but to actually come on and speak about it, this is like another level of courage that I really commend you and thank you because I think it's going to help another dad out there think about maybe opening up too. So with that said, will you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your cultural background, and your fatherhood story?
Yeah, thank you, first of all, Jasmine and Peggy, for having me on. I'm super honored to actually be here and talk about this. It's not something that I knew I wanted to talk about, but every time it does come up, I'm pretty, I don't know if passionate is the right word, but I'm highly invested in the conversation. I find myself like talking parents talk a lot, like just the whole parenting journey. Like I'm in those conversations a lot. So thank you for having me. So I'm a father of two, older girl and a boy, and I'm Vietnamese American. My family we're full Vietnamese and kind of immigrated to the U.S. In the early 80s. Specifically, we were, after the war, like the Vietnamese refugees, like they were kind of just landing in all different kinds of places. We landed in Napa, California. So really fortunate to have grown up there because the Catholic Church kind of like sponsored certain families. And so there's like a little small population of Vietnamese people there that are all my family ever since the 80s.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So if you're Vietnamese and from Napa, you're related to Matt?
Maybe.
Very possibly. Like there's a couple others that weren't, but there's definitely like a legacy there. So
that's impressive.
So yeah, that's my background. I mean, I was born there though, so I wasn't an immigrant myself. So I kind of grew up in the US. Pretty sure I faced the same kind of identity things that other Asian Americans first gen go through. And then I think in terms of like my parenting journey and how it came to be, my wife and we married in 2015, and we always knew that we wanted kids. We didn't start right away because most of our like pre-marriage relationship was pretty like we were long distance, and we actually didn't spend a lot of time together. Mm-hmm. So she's a pharmacist also. We met in school, a couple years difference. So there was always like a factor that prevented us from having like a real relationship or like a real like a relationship that you would expect. So once we got married, we wanted to kind of like make up for lost time and really just enjoy ourselves, enjoy living together, enjoy doing the things that like people in relationships do. Mm-hmm. But I think after about 2 years or 2.5 years, not very long, we decided, it was probably time to start trying. And it didn't take too much longer until our first kid and our daughter was born in 2018.
And then you had a second, right? A few more years later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then kind of the same thing. Like we just really wanted to enjoy the present. So with our daughter, we were just really embracing the parenting journey and wanted to just kind of soak it up for what it was. And then I think right around when she turned 3, we thought, okay, I think it's time where I think she'll benefit from a sibling, and we kind of want to have another. I would have to say that the second time around, it took a little bit longer. It took probably like about, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. Not long by others. I know others have extenuating journeys in trying to conceive, but it did take a little bit longer. So my second a boy was born in March of 2022. So there's about a 3.5 year gap between the two of them. And we maybe, as a lot of us like to plan our age gaps and all that, it didn't really go to our plan, but I mean, we wouldn't have it any other way. It's perfect for what we're experiencing today.
And for either of the pregnancies, for both of the kids, what your wife didn't experience any perinatal mood disorders or anything?
No. So thankfully, no, at least none that were diagnosed, because nothing ever required the attention that we needed to seek for it. She did experience difficult pregnancies, like in terms of like the nausea, like both times. I think she was pretty much sick for like the first 20 weeks of each pregnancy. Thereby we are deciding that we are done, because I don't think she can go through that again. And similarly, I don't think any of us can go through all that again. But so to answer your question, no perinatal mental or mood disorders for her.
So when we started to get to know you for our sharing your story, you had mentioned that while your wife didn't have any perinatal mental health disorders, you might have briefly had some mild depression at one point when your daughter was 2. So this is before your second child was born, correct? Yeah.
Maybe a slight correction. So okay. I think when she was 2, I started to experience just how challenging a toddler can be. And then I think right when, a little bit after the second one was born, where she was already 3, that's when it started to get more pronounced. And that's when it started to truly affect my mental well-being. Okay. So apologies if I gave incorrect information leading up to it, but 2 is when like the trigger started happening. And then like really when she was feeling it after 3, the 3-nager years, that's when it was really felt.
Because you were juggling the 3-nager and the new baby at that point?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, looking back, the second wasn't hard to juggle. I mean, I'll just be really thankful. Like our babies, I consider our babies to be very easy. But I think we pay for it because I think our toddlers were like crazy. But I would say the things that were challenging with my daughter on her own were just more pronounced once there was a second child there. And she will never be able to tell you that it was because of him or whatnot, right? But yeah, I'm going to attribute it to the fact that it was an adjustment period. Right. But it wasn't necessarily the load of caring for 2 children, not necessarily.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because we've seen statistics where if the mother has perinatal mood disorders or perinatal mental health disorders, it increases the partner or father's chances of having like postpartum depression as well. So for you, your wife didn't go through that, but you experienced it. And how was that time like? And how did you even start to notice like, this isn't just me adjusting, I'm experiencing depression?
Yeah. And there's so much to say, and like I try to compartmentalize it. So I think that maybe it's good to establish like what the situation was like to then lead up to this, right? Sure. Because I think, so I mentioned that we're both pharmacists. She specifically works inpatient in a hospital. Well, she works for a hospital system. She does work remotely, so we have that benefit. But because she's subject to the hospital system, the shifts that she works are all over the place, right? So when we became pregnant, or when we gave birth, we decided that, intentionally she was going to work all the weeknights so that she could have weekends off, because hospital systems, like you work every other weekend pretty much, you can't ever get around it. So for the first 2.5, 3 years of my daughter's life, I was pretty much the primary parent in the evenings on the weekdays, and she was the one on the weekends. So, well, sorry, we were both there on the weekends, but she was around much more on the weekends than the weekdays. So that's just like the lay of the land. Where I started to notice things was that, I mentioned that, the strong-willed toddler, big feelings started to come out around 2.5 years old, 2.5 years old. And as it progressed and she became more of a person, most of those experiences were shared with, I experienced most of that first, primarily because I was the one that was around most of the time on the weekdays.
Yeah.
So I think that because of the repeated exposure of these experiences, it was kind of weighing on me more than it would my wife, or just weighing on me more in general. Like the repeated exposure made it much more hard to handle. In saying that, as she got older and and the second kid was born, the tantrums that toddlers eventually have, they started to become a lot more frequent, and it kind of became like a ticking time bomb, walking on eggshells. Like we don't know the reason why, it just happens, right? And it was starting to come very, very regularly, to the point where I almost expected it every day. And, I didn't know how to really handle them. At that time, I was not following like the blogs that teach you how to talk to toddlers, so that, I don't know if I should name drop a couple, but I think you know what I'm talking about. But
Sure.
there's the transforming toddlerhoods and the big little feelings. Like, I wasn't following those things, so I didn't know that there was a way to process these. My way of parenting was to just kind of engage them as much as possible, and distract them, remove them from situations, and like kind of shock them out of it. But that wasn't working to the effect that it did when they were younger. Like, I couldn't just take them outside and show them something. Like, when she was upset about something, there was nothing that could break her. So it was just like waiting it out, or just waiting for it to pass. But I swear I'm getting to the answer to your question. What it really started to go wrong was that eventually, after experiencing that so many times over, I lost patience, and I started to behave in ways that I'm not proud of. I'll spare the details, but like, I was doing very unorthodox ways of shocking her out of it, like trying to, put her in situations, and I'll just keep it at that. It was not something that I was proud of. And that's when I was like, okay, I think something's wrong, because like every time this happens, I'm resorting to something that I would never think of myself to do. And that was a pretty scary situation to get into.
Were there any specific symptoms? Like, we learn in like pharmacy school, right? D, Siggy caps. You have like all these like symptoms you can list out that might indicate depression and things. Like, were there any specific symptoms that you noticed more of, that you're like, like, is this more like, is this leaning towards depression? Is this anxiety? Is this just triggers like PTSD or something from like maybe my childhood? Anything you might, to help our listeners, like maybe they could recognize some of these things.
So, being a clinician by training, like, I was very sensitive to the fact that there might be some criteria I gotta like screen myself for, right? I didn't do it thoroughly, clearly, but I did try to make sure that I was not, I was being honest with myself and the things that I was thinking. Thankfully, I never thought of harming her or harming myself or anything like that. But there was several periods of self-doubt, the lack of self-worth. Pretty much, I think at the same time, like, not only you have parenthood, but you have your career, you have other external things happening in life that are stressors, whether you like to admit it or not. And some of those things were also stressors to me, where I wasn't quite like 100% happy with them. So like, when I was going through this, it was kind of like me in my head going, this is not going right. This is not going right. Career is not going the way I want. All these things. I could only see the negative things that were happening in my life. And it started to make me question my worth and whether or not I was worthy of being here. I don't say that meaning like, again, not intent to harm, but like, I did think like, maybe I shouldn't be this girl's father. Maybe I shouldn't be this, husband. It's like, maybe this isn't right. Maybe I should go, that was like, that's where the worst that it got. And that's when I was like, okay, I think I should probably talk to someone that's not my wife or someone else about this, and kind of like that's kind of how I started that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for kind of sharing that. I know that was probably really hard to sort of like let people know about but at the same time, I want to point out that a lot of moms also kind of, when they're in, like, I can relate in postpartum depression, that was probably when it gets to the lowest point where you're just like, I don't deserve, why am I this kid's mom or parent? I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing here? I'm not cut out for this. I'm not worth doing this. Like, I'm sucking at being a wife. I'm sucking at being everything right now. Like, what is the point? And so I think even just you saying all this to me was like, wow, like dads can feel that way too. And so I think there's something really powerful about sort of sharing that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think because when we think about what like male depression looks like, a lot of times the one feeling, I think especially among Asian males, that is like validated because of our examples from our fathers or whatnot, is anger, right? So sometimes the depression will just look like anger. It'll look like rage. It'll look like irritability. And then the other side of the depression that doesn't get talked about is that self-criticizing, is that feelings of worthlessness that you were like able to recognize, and also not just recognize, but be like, ooh, I need to get help. What was that like, getting the help? How was it finding therapy, or had you done therapy before?
Yeah, so I had never done therapy before. I had no idea like what it was supposed to look like. Again, even though I'm in healthcare, I'm like, do I see a psychiatrist, or who do I talk to, right? The first place I started was just to kind of like leverage the benefits that we get at our employer, as like what mental health services that they have or whatnot. So I just pretty much went to my HR and said, like, I wanted to look into like what they had, and I found like, the virtual platform to just schedule time with anyone to talk to, and that's kind of how I started my therapy journey. And I'll just, I mean, we might get into this in another question, but I think I'll just go. It's just natural to kind of go through it right now.
Sure.
Like, I actually didn't do it that long. My first session, it was kind of just unpacking the situation, and it was more about the therapist asking questions about my daughter, like what is she like, what does she do, and it's just me answering questions. I didn't find it too helpful, but I knew that I couldn't just stop with that one, right? So the second time around, I chose a different therapist, and that one, like, because of my first therapy experience, I was like, you know what, I need to make this about me and just talk to you about what I'm feeling. Like, I think the first time I was like, what do you think about my daughter? Like, what is she like? What do you think? What do I need to know about her to solve her? Right. It was more about what should I do? But this time I was like, how do I intentionally talk about myself? And I gave the examples of like think this is not going well. This is not going well. Like, I feel this way about myself. And then the words that I remember was like, the therapist said, like, where's the evidence of that? Like, what evidence is there to lead you to that statement? And that, like, I couldn't answer it. Like, I don't really have evidence. It's just all in my head, right? So I would say that particular session helps tremendously, just to kind of like, I don't have to be so hard on myself.
Yeah.
I didn't actually do any further therapy after that. And I think it's a combination of I found other ways to relieve stress and we can get into that a little bit, that led me down a more healthier path, combined with the fact that children, they grow, they evolve, they mature, they change. So things were getting a little bit easier there. And then we also, once we had the second kid, we also made the decision of like, hey, I think you got to go back to working some weekends, because I don't think it's healthy for the kid to only know this experience, like this bedtime dinner routine with just one parent every single night. Sometimes we don't know this, but like, we were attributing like the behavior to the situation. Like, if I'm the one that's parenting all the time and I have a way of parenting, maybe it's affecting the way she behaves and responds to things, because she only knows how I handle things most of the time. And maybe she just needs her mom a little bit more, because she isn't getting that 5 days out of the week at night when it's like the most vulnerable time. So like, once we made that switch, there was a little bit more balance with everything. And then I think as she got older and I got more, like, I guess, I don't know if humble is the right word, but as I got more educated with how to like deal with things, and also I started following the blogs and things like that, like I think things just got better, and I never scheduled any further therapy just because I didn't think I needed it.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of it makes me think of when Jasmine was saying, like I eventually got off medication and didn't need it moving forward. Some people might have needed to stay on medication and continue even after. And in the same way, there's people that maybe start therapy and then continue to go on with therapy long term. And then there's people who maybe need therapy and it's really just kind of situational based, which is also why you have these types of like employee assistant programs where the type of therapy they provide is really targeted to be brief and, short and maybe more solution focused versus like, I didn't hear it in any of these examples with therapists, anyone being like, so tell me about your childhood trauma, right? Like that would have unpacked way too many things. And the first one was kind of maybe seeing, oh, this dad is asking me about their kid. They're not used to maybe dads having to unpack their own stuff and focus mostly on your child. While the second one was like, okay, let's focus on these thoughts you're having and keeping it very present focused and dealing with what was present. And it helped. And then you shift it. And I think there's so many examples of how therapy can be helpful. That doesn't have to be like, I've been in therapy for 20 years. And some people really need that. And it's really helpful. Some people continue to see a therapist just for maintenance, even if they're not struggling. And some people say, I need therapy for this brief period in my life where things are really hard. And now that we've learned the tools, I can continue to use them with our next child, with my child as she grows, with changing situations with my wife and her situation. And it doesn't mean you have to go back or maybe something else happens in your life and you do, but this is such a great example of like, sometimes you need therapy for this very present moment, this very present issue.
Yeah. And I think also just kind of like, now you've sort of opened the door. You're like, I kind of know what this is about.
Yeah.
And I know I have this tool. If I ever really did need to go back and rely on it, then yeah, I have something in my pocket that I could pull out to try again if I really needed to.
Yeah.
I think what we often forget too is that postpartum is a long period. It doesn't just kind of end at that 1 year mark.
Right.
And honestly, parenting and mental health are closely linked and related, I think. Like, as my kid grew and older and like, different challenges came up and stuff too, I was like, man, like I'm off my antidepressant, but like this stuff, parenting is wild, right? And that's also when I realized that I have triggers, also stemming back to maybe my childhood I didn't realize. And that's why, I sort of continued therapy and the topics change and shift. So I still think that it was good, now you have this tool and you've opened the door.
I would for sure, like, I think what I learned also was, I think what you mentioned, Peggy, like sometimes therapy is necessary. Sometimes you can do it without having a problem and it's totally fine because it's a way to talk about something to someone. So I didn't realize that I didn't realize that could be a use for it, which then also shifted my mindset into thinking therapy is not necessarily a negative indicator of anything in your life.
No.
Like people, like I think back when we were younger, it's like, oh, I'm in therapy, and everyone's like, oh, like
what's wrong with you?
Right? But now it's like it's kind of like empowering to say that I'm in therapy, and you like it's kind of fun because you get to. It's kind of like this podcast. You're talking to people about things that you can soundboard off of, and you end up coming away with more insights than not. So
I always feel like having a therapist is like. I feel like people should have a therapist in the same way that people have a primary care doctor. Because you don't have to be sick to have a doctor, but when you need that one, and it doesn't even have to be like, I see my therapist every week. Maybe as you are doing better or not struggling as much, or, just feeling like, okay, I don't need to see my therapist that often. You can move it to every other week. You can move it to once a month, depending on the therapist. Like I think some, it really depends, but I think there's plenty of therapists who are totally open to being like, you can change the frequency of when you see me. We can pause. And if you need to come back to me, and as long as I have openings, it's in the same way that we see a doctor yearly or whenever, or you message your doctor to be like, oh, I have a sore throat, but it's different. We should really just see therapists and therapy in that light.
Yeah, I totally think so too.
Pretty visionary. I like that.
I actually think everyone, like even starting as kids, should have one. Like you sign them one just to have one, just so you can establish a relationship. Because, that's the part I realized in postpartum is that like by the time that you're in an emergency kind of situation where it's really bad and you're struggling to find someone at that point, like that's the hardest part because you haven't established care. You don't know where to go to. So I totally am on board with that idea that I feel like, how we have like PE in schools? Like, I think we need, instead of just physical education, we need like mental health education too. Like that should be baked into our kids' like curriculum as well. I don't know why that isn't, because we're taking care of our whole body. We're a whole person. It's not just our like limbs, right? So yeah.
My coworker was also saying we should have therapy at work, like work, like confidential work specific therapy, because how much of that drama at work happens that affects your well-being, right? Like,
so. There are some companies, since I am in the health tech space, that have, there are programs out there where they will have on-site therapists in the office for certain companies. And so these programs where they will have therapists and they will, Jasmine's raising her hand.
We do.
Has therapists on site as well. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like the mental health tech space has been booming and expanding. And I think because more and more, especially after the pandemic, more and more people are like, mental health is so important. And so I'm hoping that it's a ripple effect, that more and more organizations, whether it's your office or wherever, will give people access to mental health. It's clearly a big deal right now.
Yeah. And I think like your birthday post 2 years ago, like especially really touched me. It was really raw. It was really honest. And I can still even remember the feelings you mentioned around it to this day of kind of like masking what you were going through. So, sorry, not that you were masking. I was like, instead of masking kind of what you were going through, like you could have made it a happy, celebratory, big birthday post. That's what we usually do on social media on our birthdays, right? We want to make it about like, wow, I'm having the best day ever. But instead of doing that, you weren't sugarcoating and you were just really trying to, like really say like, this is not a facade. This is not a facade. This is not like, I'm not trying to hide what I'm going through. This is what I'm feeling right now. And it's maybe not like the best birthday, but this is just kind of real like life. And so I really admire that courage and bravery, especially in our community of Asian Americans, especially as an Asian American male. So, at the same time, I can't help but just sort of recognize that, it's especially rare and hard for AAPI males to talk about these things. Why do you think that it is so hard for Asian American males to speak up about mental health?
I don't think we have a lot of good examples to live off of, or to draw inspiration from, or to use as examples to take action. I mean, again, like from my perspective, right? Like the Asian male is generally emotionless, or at least on the surface they are. They don't spend a lot of time talking about it. And then obviously when you talk about parenting, I think maybe Asian parenting in general tends to be stereotypically a lot more rough and just like very militant and all those things. So you don't feel like talking about things is welcomed, and then you pass that projection onto the rest of society thinking a certain way. So I guess in short, we don't have a lot of examples to draw from to then talk about it. And then I think obviously as men, like sometimes we just have this pride, whether it's a substantiated, if that's the right word, like whether it's a substantiated pride or not, like it's there. Like there's this macho man persona that we all are, we've all been grown to kind of admire as our like guiding force of being a man, and sometimes it's perceived as weak. And I think pretty much that's pretty much where it lies. And I think only recently is it being more accepted because one, more people are doing it, and then two, I think at least as parents, I think this millennial, maybe Gen Z, like generation of parents, like the fathers are more involved now than ever before, in my opinion. Like our fathers were not doing the same things that we are doing now. It's a function probably of resources also, because we have good jobs, and that means we want to free up time to spend time with our kids and all that. But I think we're doing more. So like we are, like perfect example right here. Like I'm forced to have to address it because I'm now educated enough to know when something is not normal, or I don't have to accept this as the reality.
Yeah. That's powerful, because I think, again, it comes with a bit of privilege, right? Because our
Right.
parents were in survival mode. A lot of them are immigrants coming over here. And they don't have the luxury to really think about, like, mental health on a day-to-day basis. It's just kind of get through the day, do what you need to do to survive. And so I do feel like even if I'm thinking about my own dad, like growing up, a lot of it, when I look back, and I don't think when he and I talk about it now, or when he like reads some of the things I write now about parenting, he looks back and he's like, man, I was not a gentle parent. And he's like, and I kind of wish I had done some things differently. But at the same time, that sort of repair is also healing and can still happen. But I'm realizing that, like, I can't blame him for the way he, expressed his feelings, because, like you said, he probably didn't have a model either. And so I think as we, as cycle breakers, are changing that narrative for our kids, I hope that they grow up with much better like insight and like you said, ability to sort of detect this is not normal. Like, I shouldn't be acting this way, or like where I can at least talk about it with my parents instead of stifling it or hiding it. Yeah.
And when you said there weren't any examples, the first thing that came through my mind is like, and now we have examples. We have your story that other dads are like going to be listening to, or even your own children are watching you model what it looks like to prioritize mental health, or talk about mental health, or value mental health, or just even like among your friends. I'm sure, I feel like maybe guys are more open now than our father's generation with their friends. Like, I don't even know who my dad's friends are, because I feel like that generation of men, as they get older, they just stay with the family or they work, versus I think millennial, I guess Gen Z now is becoming parents. But what if,
I might be wrong there. I don't even know where the cutoffs are anymore.
I think I heard the oldest of the Gen Zs are almost about to turn 30.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
so maybe,
okay.
I saw a statistic about Gen Z parents and I was a little blown away, but Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, I think this little cluster of parents that are parenting now, ones that are basically parenting the young ones, you're seeing, like, that statistic was like the dads are, there's spending 3 times as much time with their children than their parents were. And so you're setting a new example.
And if you don't mind me sharing, like actually a very relatable example to this particular snippet of the topic, I have a cousin who's older than me, and I would see him like on the surface, he would be a prototypical like example of the older generation. Like, he doesn't say a whole lot, or like, fun-loving guy, great person. He's just not as animated or outgoing like on the surface as I am in this example per se. And we've been hanging out more, and he's a parent too. And we don't even talk that much, actually. But in one like random gathering, I was talking about, like, I don't even know how it came up, but I talked about therapy. And then like a week later, he texted me saying, "Hey, like, where'd you go for therapy? Like, what did you do? And any examples?" And I was like, "Oh," and I told him my story. Like, I used the employer thing or whatever. And I was like, but the fact that he inquired about it is a sign of what you're describing, where like the more examples that are out there, the more, hopefully the more common it becomes. And I definitely, of all the dad friends that I know, he was one person I did not expect that from. Not because he's a horrible like stoic dad or anything. He just didn't seem like the type that is overly expressive or wanting to talk about things, but he asked. So
and that's the first step.
I should probably check on him. I don't even know where that went, but
but that's the first step, is to hear about it and to be like, hey, like, okay, it's okay to like, I see somebody I know going to therapy. Okay, maybe it's okay for me to go. Maybe this will help me. Like maybe I needed it more than I thought I did. And that kind of de-shaming that, because, in the Asian culture, I feel like a lot of our parents' generation is just like, why are you going to therapy? Like, just talk to a family member, or like, just think in the positive direction. Right. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. Like, we know now it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. One thing that is really standing out to me is this whole journey for you of mental health, prioritizing mental health, kind of essentially being a mental health advocate, really started in fatherhood. Do you feel like becoming a father changed your mental health? Because it sounds like prior to being a dad, this was not top of mind for you.
Absolutely. And the reason why is because in that example, it started to affect the way I was behaving towards people that I love. Before, it's like I carry the weight of the whole shoulders, and it's only for me. Like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter what happens to me. But now it was to the point where it's happening to people that rely on me for their well-being. So, and again, that's not. I don't know if I like came to that conclusion, or it just organically happened where like I need to address this because I'm gonna screw up a life here, you know. So that was definitely the reason. But I think the feelings that I felt throughout this process in parenthood were definitely there pre-parenthood. It was just I never felt the need to talk about it, address it, especially professionally. So, and I can't even recall, like, I don't know what my thought process was. I mean, I did reach out to friends and ask them for advice and things like that. But I think because, again, it was just me, and it was just like, it'll pass. This too shall pass, right? Like you just get over it. And then that's that. But now that it was affecting another life, it forced me to react differently.
Because the stakes were high. Not that they weren't, because you were still valuable as a person without your child, but then seeing that person that you love more than anything in the world, and you're like, oh, I cannot keep doing this. Like, this is not sustainable, especially if it's going to impact the future of my child.
100%.
I mean, everything kind of, like we always say, it all stems back. You know, it all starts at the beginning. And so it can pile up over time if you are not addressing it. Similarly, I kind of feel like I probably had anxiety even before I became a mom, and it just further heightened it in postpartum when everything, like you said, the stakes were high, right? I have this person to keep alive. It's not just me anymore that I have to keep alive. I have to keep this baby alive. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And then also, like you said, you know, relationships too, not just with your child, but also with your spouse, right? You know, you've sort of mentioned like how you and your wife have worked through things and, you know, problem solved on how to make things better, right? So how has your, you know, journey and relationship with mental health changed your relationship with your wife?
I feel like this experience validated something that I didn't know I needed validation from. So I guess let's just go back to that birthday post, right? Like I was feeling down and out, didn't want to do anything. She was the one that forced me to go out to dinner with her. She arranged for the kids to be watched while we went out. And that itself gave me anxiety because at that point, it's like ticking time bomb, right? Like, how is she going to deal with going to the grandparents for a couple hours? Because we didn't do that a lot. And she was at the height of her toddlerhood, like whatever it is. So I was like, that was in itself was a lot of anxiety. But my wife took care of all of that. She said, don't worry, just get dressed, show up. And I essentially, I think that what changed is that I kind of mentioned how like, well, maybe I didn't mention it in full detail, but I'm the type of person that just likes to handle everything myself. Like I feel rewarded when I feel accomplished when I can do things for myself and for my loved ones. And I didn't like rely on her to do a whole lot. Like, not saying that she doesn't do anything, but it's just like I want to be able to take care of the things and make it easy for her. Like, my whole mission is to make things easy for my family, right? And I think her stepping in and seeing how my mental health is being affected made me realize that I don't have to do it all, and that she is there for me as well as I am there for her. Again, it's not that she was never there. It's just that I never wanted to put that responsibility on her to be there for me, because I was like, I got this. But seeing how I was reacting, seeing how it was affecting me, and her taking the initiative to arrange these things, and then and forced me to kind of talk about it with her at dinner. Like we hadn't had a conversation like that in months. So it kind of it made me appreciate her so much more. And I know that she keeps this on top of mind, because even though things are pretty good now, like she's very much like, do you need more time to do something? Like, you know, do you want to take the night off to do this or that? She, I mean, even like when it comes to career stuff, like she'll like send me things and give me some like tips, like things that she found that helps me with other problems of my life that don't involve parenting. So it's pretty much opened up a new area of our relationship for sure. For sure.
Oh, I love your wife too. I mean, I know her too. So that's so sweet. And I think also just to sort of remember that, like, it's interesting you're saying, like, I felt like I had to hold it all and do it all and carry all the weight, because I feel like a lot of moms feel that way too. That's like, if I'm not the one doing everything, everything's going to fall apart. And, you know, I have to be on top of, like, you know, making sure things are restocked, or like, you know, I'm, you know, feeding the baby and I'm keeping track of all this stuff. So I feel like the moms also feel that way, but it's also kind of like, well, dads can feel that way too. And that relationships are two-way streets, right? If you don't let the other person in to help you out, then you're always going to be carrying that load. And also maybe give yourself less pressure to have to carry it all, because I think that's where it starts to like weigh down on you, right? So it's cool that you guys kind of got to, you know, open up and make that work better.
There's this like saying that I was living by for a while. I still do, but there is like a gift and a curse to that saying. It's like marriage and stuff. It's not 50-50. It's 100-100. Mm-hmm. But I think I take the 100 part to the extreme, to the point where like it's like I don't like, I'm giving 100 and I don't care what she does. Like I shouldn't think that way. But I think in practicality, I see that it is definitely 100-100. Like you're both trying to do the best that you can. If you don't mind me unpacking a little bit more about that whole like carrying the weight of your shoulders and usually being a mom. So I was raised by 3 older sisters and 1 older brother. So I'm the youngest. And I think one that in is of itself, like my brother and I very much embrace the roles that are traditionally held by mothers, because we were just raised that way. Like we, you know, handle the cooking and, I mean, I don't do much cooking, but the cleaning and just keeping things in order. Like that's something that my brother and I do a lot of, that I probably not many other Asian men do. So that's one thing. The second thing is just being the youngest, and like, and this is another layer of like trauma that I'm trying to repair, is like feeling like you need to please everyone above you, doing the right thing, because, you know, I'm not intentionally trying to say like throw shade at the family, but like the environments that we grow up in are like pretty, they can be unintentionally hostile in terms of when they give you feedback about how you're doing something. Like, oh, that's wrong, like do it this way, do it that way. And I really took, as the youngest, I took all of that so seriously, and you can see how it's playing out, right? Like I'm very stressed and anxious about certain things to make sure that they're done right. It's also a pharmacist trait, right? We're perfectionists, right? Yep. So that is that whole concept of like, again, where's the evidence that there's something wrong here? Like I'm learning to repair that, and like making sure that it's okay for the dishes to sit another day, or it's okay to not pick up after the kids for one of those other days, because they're going to just mess it up the next day anyway. Like it's I'm getting a lot better at just accepting that life happens without having to be like picture perfect all the time.
I love that you're able to tie it back to your own childhood, because even though that's not necessarily something you needed to do in your therapy session, sometimes just having that knowledge of like, wait, why do I think the way I do? Or why do I act the way I do? Being able to attach it to like, oh, because when I was growing up, blankety blank happened. It actually kind of frees, not freeze with a Z, freeze up kind of that pressure of having, like you said, you don't have to do, because you're like, oh, that's where that comes from. Then let's leave the dishes, versus just thinking that this is just who I am and this is the way I am, being like, knowing the backstory. That's why there is so much value in spending some time understanding your own childhood and your own upbringing and how that plays a role in how you are a parent. That I feel like parenting forces you to look at your own experiences with your parents or your upbringing.
Yeah. Totally. Naming it to tame it, right? Like, where's that coming from? And, it seems like your mental health is in a better space now. And you mentioned you kind of do some other things to help yourself out and find, joy in certain things. And what changes have you made or mindset shifts have you had to help yourself feel more balanced?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is I'm no longer shy about like requesting time off,
Okay.
like scheduling time for me to do whatever I need to do, whatever I want to do. Like so, um, I'm really, first of all, I like thanks and so much praise to my wife who like loves nothing more than to just sit at home by herself and do puzzles or whatever, because then I can just go out and like have a drink with a friend or something like that. Like I get to go out still because we have that dynamic that it works. So I schedule more time to see friends and like do things with them like more frequently than I did before. And well, actually, maybe the frequency hasn't changed, but I'm making sure that I do it and I don't go too long without doing it because that's a healthy thing. But I think actually that one of the biggest things that's helped me is personal training. So I don't know if like back when we went to school, Jasmine, like I wasn't exactly the biggest gym rat or anything, but I think we both like to exercise. But
Yeah.
More recently, I've been really into fitness, and usually, I did my own stint with training, like when we got married and stuff. You try to look good for the wedding or whatever, but then I've done it on my own. But then I was like, you know what, like right, pretty much at the height of when I was going through the stuff with my daughter, like I personally didn't feel like I was like happy with the way I was looking physically and even performing physically with all the exercises. So I was like, I was just trying to think about what's something that I can fix and will really make me happy, even if it's something superficial as like what your physical physique looks like, right? So I said, I think I want to try something. I want to reach a new goal with fitness. So I enrolled with like a virtual trainer, and I started sessions like, pretty right when I did my first therapy session. I also started personal training. And I think going through that rigor of meeting with someone twice a week and exercising and getting results was doing a lot for my mental health.
Yeah.
And then I think like over time, so I'm still doing this 2 years later, and I don't need it, but it's actually become its own form of therapy because this
I was
trainer,
just thinking that. I was
yeah,
just
because
like, this is your therapy.
it really is, especially with the trainer that I have, because he's not just like yelling at me to do workouts. He's actually we're talking about some pretty profound things, like just, how does one's relationship with food work, or how do you juggle your busy schedule and fitting in time for your exercise? And it's actually really deep. So I just look at it as another form of therapy. And that's probably why I don't do the other therapy, because I have him like twice a week. I look forward to just logging on, getting some work done, and then talking to him about anything. So
And exercise in itself also is supposed to be good for your mental health, right? Like for me too, like if I try to fit in like a workout once a week, because I know for me, that's going to help me, also helps me sleep better because I have issues with sleep. Yeah. So, all of that I think it can also tie in. So that's really good. I'm glad you found like this is like your outlet, like something you enjoy and love, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you are now our second dad on our podcast, and spoiler alert, you won't be the last.
I hope not.
But I know there's dads out there listening to Healing the Tigress. Shout out to those dads who listen. But let's say there's a dad that's listening, and this dad is saying, I know I'm really struggling, and I kind of like you said with your cousin is like, oh, you see a therapist. Let's say they don't know what to do, where to start, where to go. And you kind of went through the same thing. You're like, do I see a psychiatrist? Who do I see? How would you advise them to take the next step?
I mean, I think the first thing is just talk about it with anyone. It doesn't have to be a professional first. So, I mean, make sure that they're maximizing or capitalizing on important people in their life that they can talk about anything with first. And then in terms of like starting therapy, I mean, I think honestly, I don't know what advice I'd give because I didn't go through the system frequently enough to know like the best path. So I would probably just do the same thing and say, hey, does your employer offer anything? Most of them do, especially here in California. So leverage those benefits. But I guess apart from like just the tactics of like starting therapy, I would say just like if they're really struggling, like recognize it. I would say kind of to try to infuse the things that I've done. So make time for yourself, and kind of recognize why that is important. I would say give yourself grace, but simultaneously always strive to be better. I don't know. I always a part of me, and this is clearly a function of my perfectionist mindset. Like I never give myself grace, and I always just try to be better. And I always look down on like I used to look down on people that say like that kind of pity, not pity, but like give themselves the grace. And I'm like, nah, you got to push harder. Like you got to work harder. I was always that kind of person, but now I'm saying it on record. Like give yourself grace. You're doing the best that you can. But you know, you'll find ways to be better if you do give yourself grace. I don't know if that, I mean, that, I don't know if that's probably all I would say to start. I mean, I think it's going to be situational, obviously. I don't know, as a person who works in strategy and all that, I'm very like, oh, I gotta think of all the solutions and like chart it out for you. And I'm not going to go there right now, but I think the most important thing is to just talk about it.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
With anyone, I think that's the huge one. Cause I think especially if guys aren't talking to even their friends sometimes, that's the first step. Like see what that does, see what ripple effect that does of like gives your friend permission to be like, oh man, me too. Like parenthood was really hard in the beginning for me too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think there's no shame in it, right? Like I think that's the big thing is that like opening that door to say like, it's okay if you want to talk about it. It's totally okay.
And if you're not the type of person that's comfortable with talking like just outwardly like that, like do it. I guess there are other actions you can take to get there. Like what I found, at least in my community here, is that like parents like to hang out with other parents because their kids, maybe the kids go to school together or go to daycare together. And every parent is looking for a way to socialize beyond just what they're every parent is looking for a way to socialize because they're spending so much time with their kids or their young ones, right? So what I've seen and what I've partaken in is like getting these little, like we call them play dates, but they're but essentially just getting together with other parents and kind of like eventually it all comes out because they will eventually talk about the things that they're struggling with this kid. Maybe not so serious. It could just be something very basic, listening, potty training, whatever it is. But that's when the dialogue will come out, and that's where someone might find their way in to talk deeper about something that's truly bothering them.
I like that tip.
Nowadays, people have play dates at breweries, so like the kids just run around and the parents start. Then when you drink beer, you start talking more, right? So maybe that's a strategic way to make it work too. I don't know.
Yeah, those are all great tips, I think, and especially what you said about like giving yourself grace to help yourself get better, if that's your end goal, right? And this question is a little, we're just going to wrap up, but like this question is a little bit kind of like Peggy's question. It's more for like, if there are like dads to be or new dads, if you know any, or if we have dads out there listening, is there something you can tell them about maybe what to expect, and how they can sort of prepare to navigate feelings during new parenthood?
I think there's a lot of things you can say, but I think the one thing that would help the most and probably helped me is that, and specific to fathers, I guess, I mean, mothers probably experience this too, but there's no one rule book that's going to lead you to success. Because our generation was all about the parenting books and like if like this is how you sleep train, this is how you get them to eat, this is how you get them to do whatever, and like you only hear about the stuff like from the posters because it's like they're trying to share the tips of success, right? But in reality, like it always deviates from what the guidance is. So what the advice I would give is like prepare yourself and like read and learn about it, but expect that it's not going to go the way that it appears to be written, and embrace that because every person like you and I are different, and we are gonna need our own way to navigate through life. just like you're going to have your own way to navigate through parenthood, and the baby's going to have their own way to get through whatever they're getting through. So I guess be prepared, but expect deviations, and don't be so hard on yourself when it deviates.
Yeah. I like to say that, like to remember that recommendations are not requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big one that I feel like you just said right there. And
Yep.
yeah, that's a good expectation to not expect too much.
Yeah. Because I think that we didn't talk about that earlier, but I think that played a role because, again, I was 100%, right? I can handle it. I'm driven. I wanted to be able to figure out these things. Like I wanted to be able to say, like, I sleep train the kid. I get them to eat. I get them to do all these things. And, I was so fixated on like making sure that I knew the best ways to do everything because I'm just committed to that excellence. But nope, it's really not worth that stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And every kid's different. And, some kids will sleep better than others. And when they turn into toddlers, they change it up on you anyways. So
yeah, it never lasts.
Doesn't matter what you did.
Yeah. I have a friend who just had a baby. He's a new dad, and I was checking on him, and he's like, she just keeps changing. Like one thing worked, and then now this other thing, now it doesn't work anymore. Or like, why didn't I know this? And it's. And I think he said like he learned a language in 2 years, and this is even harder than learning a foreign language. And I was like, I know, buddy. It's like, it's
and
a
it keeps
whole
changing
different
on
thing.
you.
This is not like anything else you'll ever learn because they just keep changing. And one thing will work one week and then it won't work the next week. And you just have to let it go and go with the flow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Matt, so much for this kind of deep, profound conversation. And I really hope this will help out some of our dad listeners out there, or maybe they'll share it with a friend who's a new dad or expecting dad, or, someone who might need it. And so thank you really much for this. Usually for our end of the episode, we like to wrap up real quick with like something you want to do for your mental health this week. Either you did it already or you're planning to do it. So we'll maybe just take turns going around to say something.
I have one.
Oh, good, because I'm still thinking of mine.
It's so funny because it was just what I was talking to Jasmine about this earlier. I actually even wrote it down on a Post-it note. I was telling Jasmine that I have to be more mindful of my free time when I have downtime or whatever, because I tend to go straight to scrolling on social media, and then the day goes by and it's just wasted and it's doom scrolling and it's not great. And there's a bunch of other things I want to be able to do in my free time that's more self-care. So I actually made what is called my free time priorities list, which is so listy of me. I live in spreadsheets kind of person, but I think it's helpful to be like, okay, when I have free time, these are the priorities of things I will do first before I even reach for my phone and open Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And writing it down and being like, oh, why do I never have time to meditate? Why do I never have time to exercise or whatever? Because when I do have downtime, what felt like, oh, I'm just going to open my phone. Oh, I see a notification. And next thing you know, you're just down this rabbit hole of like scrolling and doing all these things. Is let me do these other things first. And at the very end of it, if I have done all the things I think I want to do for my free time, the very least priority is social media or my phone or whatever. But I'm excited to try this the next time I have downtime between like meetings or whatever, or like at night when my kid's asleep. That usually is the best doom scrolling time. But I'm like, what if I tried these other things first? And so I like literally wrote it on a Post-it because I was like, these are it literally says free time priorities, which sounds like a very type A way of organizing free time, but it works for me. And I'm excited to like prioritize other things to like stop me from just going straight to doom scrolling.
That's great. Do you have one, Matt?
I don't think it's a fair question for me because this week we're going to Hawaii.
That's nice.
So, I mean, obviously there's those things that you say that going on vacation is not vacation, it's parenting somewhere else, right? But I do intend it for it to be very relaxing because at least the kids, we have two, right? So that they can play with each other for a little bit. And we're meeting another family with also two kids. So
nice.
I'm hoping with all the parental reinforcements and childhood peer exposure that we can take slightly more of a mental break in between all of the activities. So yeah, it's not really fair. I'm not for me to answer it, but that is definitely going to be the mental health recharge activity that's going to get me through this week.
It's so nice to think about that though, like vacation and being away. I think also forces you sometimes to just kind of put down the phone, because you can't, if you want to be where, you know, in your new environment, you can't just, you know, be randomly scrolling on your phone. I just got back from also a trip, and being away and like disconnecting, because I had gone camping a while ago, and I had no reception. It was so nice not to be like distracted by anything, and nobody knew what time it was. Everyone would be like, wait, what time is it right now? And so that was nice. But also, like, coming back from that trip, now my back is kind of hurting. So I this week I'm gonna go see my chiropractor, and that form of physical health self-care, I guess, too, because I kept telling my husband, I was like, you know, I feel a little bit of like a strain, and, you know, should I just put like a solemn pause on it or something? And he's like, yeah, but like, yeah. And I'm like, but I can sort of feel like a little bit more like it shifts, or the pain moves. And he's like, well, I was like, but I'm kind of scared also to go to the chiropractor. Sometimes I'm like, what if they like make it worse? He said, well, when are you going to go? When it's like really bad and you're in super pain? I was like, okay, fine. So I'm going to go see my chiropractor this week. That's mine.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Still have to take care of your body, because I think it also totally, it's all interconnected. Like when your body's not doing well, your brain is also just hyper focused on that too. So yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being on our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I hadn't unpacked all of that, like those experiences and on the totality in a while, or maybe ever, to this extent. So I really appreciate you kind of giving me the opportunity to talk about it even more. So you guys are doing great things with this podcast, by the way. So I really, really like it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commend you for it. And yeah, I just hope it keeps going. Get more dads on.
We hope you have enjoyed Healing the Tigress in our conversations on maternal mental health in the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Please follow our show and our Instagram page to catch our latest episodes. We have so many fantastic guests and deep topics that we are so excited to cover soon.
If you enjoyed this episode or would like to support us more, please leave us a rating or a review and share this podcast with a friend to spread the word. Check out the show notes for more links. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope these conversations will help our AAPI mothers heal their inner tigress and honor their mental health as they deserve to. See you next time.